From a foreigner's perspective, Korean working culture is peculiar at best or abnormal at worst. I've been working in corporate Korea for 2 years and I feel compelled to shed light on some intriguing things from my own experiences and those witnessed around me or relayed by my friends. Listen and let me know in the comments if you can see yourself thriving in such a working environment or if these are common things in your country. Hi lovely people, welcome to my channel. My name is Layla and on this channel I talk about personal development, inner work, and my life in Seoul, South Korea. Before relocating to Seoul, I had two very clear objectives. Number one, learning the language. Number two, securing a job for a long-term stay. However, I wasn't aiming for a teaching position. I was looking for a job that matched my experience and desire to grow professionally. It became evident to me that my path would eventually lead me into the realm of corporate Korea, and judging from the countless K-dramas I watched, I knew it would be a challenge. Side note, if you are a challenge standing on the way to my dreams, you get conquered, no questions asked. I somehow knew what to expect. I was mentally prepared and I have to say I got really lucky. The company I work for treats me very well and I bypassed all the horror stories you can find online sometimes. With that said, let's talk about some what the hell things that are considered the norm here. Here's an interesting tidbit. Have you ever wondered what the top communication tool in Korean companies is? Surprisingly, it is KakaoTalk. And get this, did you know that you can have a multiple KakaoTalk profile? I didn't. You can create distinct profiles and decide which groups or individual can access each. Typically, people have one profile for personal use, chatting with friends and families, and another for work-related conversations. It allows some privacy if you don't want people at work to see your pictures, your stories, etc. Unlike typical Koreans, I use the same profile because I don't upload much on KakaoTalk. And here's a little side note. You know that saying about how if a guy gives you his Line account, he probably has a girlfriend, but if he gives you his KakaoTalk, then you can somewhat trust him? I hate to burst your bubble, but he could easily be handing you a fake KakaoTalk profile set up to chat with other girls. He could then separate his real one with all his personal photos and infos about his real life and girlfriend, and you wouldn't even suspect a thing unless you happen to have access to his KakaoTalk on his phone. So, you know, just a little something to keep in mind for my girls out there who are dating. But anyway, back to Korean companies. So KakaoTalk is the go-to communication tool besides obviously face-to-face meetings. Surprisingly, about 90% of our communication happens through KakaoTalk, even though we are physically in the same office sitting side by side. Of course, we don't check the app on our phones, but on the computer. To streamline communication, the company sets up various KakaoTalk groups based on different themes, projects, or teams. And as a result, you end up adding all your colleagues to your contact list and being added to numerous groups. Eventually, you put all these groups on silent mode because the notification can be overwhelming sometimes. And that's pretty much how you navigate communication in the workplace here in Korea. Having worked in corporate America, I could go on vacation and forget about work the entire time. You put an automatic email response and you update your voicemail, and a designated colleague covers for you should something come up. In Korea, every time I've gone on vacation, I have received Kakao messages asking for my input. It could range from a simple question requiring a simple answer to performing a task as if I were in the office, a task that can easily take about an hour. I was in Dubai in January and it happened to me 3 times. And the request always comes with these like tear emojis and those "I'm sorry to bother you" statements. In my mind, I'm thinking, well, if you're so sorry to bother me, then don't reach out to me. Taking a vacation for more than a week isn't generally viewed favorably. The underlying implication is that you are essentially delegating your responsibilities to others while you are enjoying yourself. The Korean work ethic will have you consider the collective well-being rather than your desires. Personally, as a foreigner, I'm granted implicit permission to take a 2-week break because when I travel, it's typically to visit my family abroad. Thankfully, my company understands this and I'm grateful for their flexibility. Sometimes you're not even on vacation. You leave the office for the day and mind your business when someone reaches out to you because you are needed. Again, it could be a small thing or a big thing that makes you pause what you're doing to handle it. My most vivid memory is when a longtime friend came to Seoul on vacation for the first time and we met for dinner. I also wanted to take him to Namsan Tower for the great view. That day also happened to be when we launched a program for a client. At 7 p.m., when the virtual gate of the program opened, we were flooded with questions from the participants. We entered crisis management mode and my phone was blowing up. Again, those 𝗃𝗃𝗺𝗺 groups. I tried to keep up and help at first, but then I gave up and let the people in charge handle it themselves because it was just too much. Initially, I assumed it was specific to my field, working in a marketing agency. However, the more time I spend here in Korea, it appears to be a common occurrence across all industries. I've been on dates where the other person had to attend to calls from their superiors. I've had dinners with friends checking their phones due to work obligations. In many cases, there does not seem to be a work-life balance. Work will always impede your personal time. Over time, 2 realizations dawned on me. Number 1, when you don't like something, complaining endlessly does not help. It just fosters negative energy. You either remove yourself from the situation, which is something I can't do, or learn to accept and reconcile with it. I opted for the latter approach. Second, I noticed that the colleagues reaching out to me were often confined in the office, probably longing for freedom. Empathizing with their predicament, I developed a sense of compassion and willingness to accommodate their request. So it's that we are on the same boat, let me help you row mentality. I feel bad, therefore I'm going to do my best to help. Talking about being stuck in the office, I cannot ignore a Korean concept called 야근, which roughly translates to overtime work, or worst case scenario, night duty. My experience with this happened out of nowhere. I think it was over a year ago. I went to work on a typical day, one day, and had to stay until midnight to work on a project handed to me in the afternoon. There was a deadline and I was the only person able to do what was needed to be done. So I had to stay behind. It was my first time experiencing the night ambiance at the office, and obviously I wasn't the only one who stayed behind. At some point in the evening, they ordered dinner. I completely ignored that. I wanted to be efficient and get out as fast as possible. I considered eating and chatting for 45 minutes a waste of time, but they insisted, so I ate at my desk while working at the same time. I finished at midnight. They felt so bad, they called me a cab and told me to rest at home the following day. This is something that doesn't typically happen, let's just be clear. My friend jokingly called this a baby 야근 when I explained the situation to him, and he was right, because in Korea, people will go as far as working in the office until the wee hours. I am talking 2, 3, 4, 5, sometimes until 7 a.m. to meet deadlines. I honestly don't know how they remain awake. What's the secret? Because this sounds insane to me. Are they really productive? Regardless, this practice is so normalized here. Before we move on from this topic though, I have to say that after I did overtime work and brought work with me, I think one weekend to help meet a deadline, there was a subtle shift in how people perceived me in the company. I was now an insider and I could feel it. If I were a Korean, it would have been a no-brainer. Of course, she's going to do overtime. But as a foreigner, I feel like people were a bit on the fence about how I would react to things like that. It's almost as if I had earned a fictional brownie point and proved to everyone that the company's well-being mattered to me. I don't really know how to articulate this, but there was definitely a shift, which I welcomed with open arms. I have only had 2 to 3 baby yagen, which is nothing compared to the norm, okay? I usually get to leave work on time, which again is not always the norm. It's a no-brainer in the US, but it's a constant battle in Korea. When you make plans with friends, there's always this little bit of anxiety. Will you make it on time? Or do you have to text the person you're meeting to say that you're going to be late? Or worst case scenario, cancel because there's a yagen all of a sudden that needs to happen. So it's quite tricky to navigate. As soon as you start working, you are on a 3-month probation period. This period is supposed to be for you and the company to figure out if you are a good fit for one another. Once you hit that 3 months mark, you are officially recognized as a full-fledged employee, and there is this ceremony to mark the occasion. During the ceremony, you receive a certificate from the CEO, some flowers, and you get to take pictures in front of everyone. It's quite the event, and it often coincides with promotions being offered to other people. I've noticed that Koreans really appreciate this kind of formal recognition, especially this ceremonial aspect of receiving a paper certificate. It's a chance for people to, share their thoughts and gratitude through short speeches. Interestingly, I didn't have a probation period when I joined. They sponsored my visa and I dive straight into work, becoming eligible for everything right from the start. Employees in Korea address each other with 님 at the end of their first name as a sign of respect. If the person has a specific title, you would use the person's name, title, and 님. Me, for example, I'm referred to as either 𝗏𝗏님 or editor님. Korea has, I believe, 6 degrees of speech. Formal and polite Korean are used between colleagues of the same rank. Formal speech is used when talking to a superior or a client. I've noticed that superiors speak to subordinates casually or politely, depending on the mood or the topic of the conversation. In Korea, age matters a lot, and most often the subordinates are younger than the superiors, hence the familiarity the latter will display. I thought it was respect for all, but I guess not. This is perhaps where cultural adjustment is most nuanced, and I find it the hardest to compromise or adapt. The management style in Korean companies is very top-down. The decisions originate from the individual overseeing the scope of the work, and the prevailing notion is that because they hold a superior position, they inherently know best. I want you to imagine a scenario and let me know in the comment section how you would handle it. Let's say you are a floating agent working with several teams. One team, which has 2 regular employees and a manager, head of the project, reaches out to you to review and proofread something they've created. You make the corrections and you send the deliverable. Then, when the project is completed, you are sent the work one last time for a final review, which is a very important step. You realize some of your notes were not taken into consideration, so you tell the colleague who sent you the document, and the response you get is, what you corrected was what the manager had written, so I don't feel comfortable making a change. Is there any way the current version can work? You respond, grammatical errors or grammatical errors. There are no other ways around them. However, the colleague still does not want to make the change. What would you do in that situation? Would you A, say, okay, you can ignore my feedback and do you, whatever, or B, you bypass the employee and you go straight to the manager to give your feedback? I feel like it's unfortunate that subordinates here are afraid to voice their opinions, feedback, or ideas when those go against what their superiors have in mind. They could be sitting on a gold mine, but they don't speak up to avoid shaking the boat or taking responsibility if things do not work out. I remember doing a networking event at the French Chamber of Commerce. I remember one of the topics was how to manage Korean employees. They are wired differently here due to the prevailing top-down management system. So if you are a foreign manager managing Korean employees, you have to find a way to involve people in the decision-making process, encourage them to speak up, and basically, empower them. But back to our example, this is how I would handle the situation. I will tell the person, you can handle your relationship with your manager as you see fit, but I have to maintain the integrity of my work. The record will show my document pointing out what was wrong. If you want to present your manager with something else, that will not be my document. I am in the creative industry and I am attuned to feedback. It's essential, right? I will make things look or feel the way you want me to. But there are instances where compromising is just not possible. Grammatical errors, format errors, cultural sensitivities are good examples. What's the point of assigning me as the gatekeeper if you want me to let things fly by just because you feel like it? You know, I have to stand my ground. I cannot change my feedback to appease someone. If you really want honest feedback, you will get it. So if you're a foreigner working in Korea, don't let the system change that part of you. Always stand by your work and let people figure it out. In Korea, it seems that longevity often matters more than performance when it comes to promotions. Essentially, the more years you've been with a company, the higher up the ladder you're likely to climb. For example, Mr. Y has been with a company for 4 years and has delivered average results. Meanwhile, Mr. X joined a company and within 2 years achieved outstanding results. Despite Mr. X's stellar performance, Mr. Y would most likely be the one being promoted first simply because he has seniority. Is it the same thing in your country? I feel like in the US, it is first and foremost about performance. That's why people are so competitive and productive. You want to be the best and outshine everyone to get the promotion faster. The mindset is what makes the workplace so dynamic. But I feel that when longevity is what you reward as a company, people get complacent. What do you think? How is it in your country? Knowing what I just told you about how promotion works, you would assume that people will think twice before switching jobs. If you have a title, let's say manager, for example, at company A and you quit your job, you can expect to have the same title at company B. However, if you haven't reached a title yet and switch companies, expect to start at the bottom again and wait for your turn to be promoted at company B. Whereas in the US, we usually quit company A to aspire for a greater position and more pay at company B. That dynamic does not seem to work well in the Korean system. I was actually surprised to see a lot of turnover around me. Young people don't have the patience to suffer anymore. Instead, they prioritize achieving a better work-life balance. They aren't afraid to leave if they feel overworked or underpaid, especially if they can find something better elsewhere. And I am actually glad to see this shift. When someone I know decides to quit, I actually congratulate them and see it as a positive step forward. They often use their newfound freedom to pursue their dreams, start a business, travel abroad, or take a well-deserved break. Some even take the time to acquire new skills or certifications. Koreans love certification. To enhance their career prospect, others choose to rest before diving back into the job hunt. So, do you want to work in corporate Korea? Do you feel like it is worth it if it means staying and being able to live in Korea long term? Would you make that sacrifice? Let me know in the comment section. Share this video with someone who wants to move here and work in Seoul. And feel free to binge watch my Korea how-to playlist for more info on life in Seoul. Thank you for watching. Take very good care of yourselves and you will see me in the next video. Bye!